Welcome to the Five Phenomenon Podcast. I am your host, Shane Hazen. With me today is guest host Henry Butash, writer-director whose film The Atlantic City Story is playing the Denver Film Festival. Although when we're recording this, I think there's some discrepancy on when it's actually available as to when this episode actually is released. When is the screening?
The film is available right now. It's been available for the last week or so at the Denver Film Festival. So anyone in the state of Colorado can rent the movie through Sunday, November 8th. And then, from there, it's on to the next thing.
I want to point out, are you sitting on the couch I slept on whenever I was staying with you in New York?
I am the very one, yeah. It's a good couch.
It's a very momentous couch, isn't it? It's got an amazing view.
Yeah, it's a nice day out today too, and the leaves in the park are turning color, so it's beautiful out.
Very fall-like there. It's fall-like here too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Got cold this past week, but today I haven't been out today, but it looks gorgeous. So
I try to record in the basement for better levels, so all sunlight is gone. So
yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm good. It's just not to date the recording of this conversation, but definitely
it's gonna happen.
Definitely been following the election this week. So that's just been a.
Did you watch anything interesting this week while waiting for the election?
Movie wise?
Sure.
I watched. I'd been
on CNN, I guess.
Yeah, I had been totally the last 6 weeks or so, because we just finished the film for the Denver Festival, and so the last 6 weeks I've just been swamped with work, and I had not been able to watch anything. And this week really was one of the first weeks I was able to relax and watch a film before the election on Tuesday. And
did you have a backlog?
So there was a backlog of things I wanted to watch. I missed basically the whole October, Halloween horror watching tradition. And so I just wanted to pick a couple horror films I'd never seen before. So I watched, I'd never seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay.
I had never seen...
You never watched it when you were in Austin?
Nope, not once.
I first watched it when I was in Austin, and I had a friend who kept pointing out, he's like, this was filmed 5 miles from here.
Yeah, I was, looking all that up after I finished. And then I watched Jacques Tourneur's Curse of the Demon, which was amazing.
Haven't seen it.
That
was on TCM this week, wasn't it?
Or
last week.
They were playing other Tourneur films. They were playing his Val Lewton film, so they were playing Cat People and The Leopard Man. They might have played Curse of the Demon too, but I missed it if they did.
I saw it. I've really only seen the 2 Cat People movies.
Yeah. They played I Walked with a Zombie. I remember
I
seeing
saw that.
Yeah, that was on TCM. And so those were earlier in his career when he was working with Val Lewton as a producer. And so then this is later after he goes off and does, a whole bunch of other films like Out of the Past and Wichita and Stars in My Crown and stuff like that. And so it's his return back to horror without Val Lewton. And I think it throws sort of a wrench into the people who attribute those earlier horror films to Val Lewton rather than Tourneur, because he makes such a great horror film on his own as well. And so for the people who care about that kind of thing, the question of authorship...
I think the people who listen to this will be the people who
who care about that kind of thing. Yeah.
Because Out of the Past was a recent discovery earlier this year. I'd never seen it. Blew my fucking mind.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah, that movie's incredible. I remember my grandfather sent me a DVD when I was maybe like 12 or 13. And even then, I loved the movie. It really is incredible.
Yeah, the femme fatale in there is just... It was really illuminating to me because it is one of the most misogynistic femme fatales I've...
Yeah.
Yeah. This week on election night, I made a point to watch comfort food 3-hour movies. So
yeah.
I watched Godfather just because I wanted to have a sober-eyed view of America, and then I watched Titanic so I could see, the what's the ecstasy of tragedy? What's the Nietzschean phrase? I wanted to see that on screen just to play out in case things did not go well. But that was my election night. So you hit on something when we talked earlier about uh, y- basically you said in the summer whenever TCM was showing a ton of John Ford movies, you went on a marathon.
Yeah, this was back, earlier in the pandemic, and I was really looking for projects to give my life structure and to be able to keep track of time.
As we do.
And so I had created one in the spring. I had gone through I found a college syllabus on, this is the long answer. I hope you've got nowhere to be, but
It's a podcast, dude. That's what this is for.
So in
There are no transcribing monkeys.
so in the spring, I had found this college syllabus for a class on the cinema of Hong Kong, and I watched,
Really?
yeah, and so I watched maybe like 40, 45 films from Hong Kong.
What time frame?
The whole thing, but predominantly sort of the 70s and 80s is when the bulk of their creative output is. But there was earlier 60s stuff, and then the 90s, especially when the country is preparing for the handover from Britain into, I guess now they're in sort of an independent state before they return to China's claim. Obviously, there's a whole political thing going on that I'm not an expert in, but just from the films, it was.
There's turmoil there now too.
Yeah, exactly. But so basically, I also, there's a great book by David Bordwell, who I really love. He writes a lot of the textbooks that are used in film schools around the country, and is even just his blog is one of my favorite places to read about, just to find quality writing about film.
I'm not familiar with them.
When he has this book about Hong Kong, and so I was basically using that as my text, and I'd read through that, and then I'd watch the movies, in the evening. And I really loved the structure of just giving myself sort of a huge movie assignment like that during the pandemic when I just needed something to do.
Well, you went through a lot, right?
Yeah, I went through a lot. And so then we got to July, and I basically reached the end of this course that I created for myself. And so I was looking for a new thing. And I saw that TCM was going to be playing John Ford for pretty much the whole month. And I thought, well, this could be it. This could be my next project. And so I had seen, everyone's familiar with John Ford, and I had seen, his most famous, say, 10 films, the kind of movies everyone has probably seen, whether it's The Searchers or Stagecoach, Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. He's got those films that sort of.
See, I kind of feel like 10 is even a big number. I feel like 5.
Five, sure.
Maybe I'm basing this off me because I was so late to the game with Ford.
Yeah. Well,
Ford in my teen years was just considered so. I don't know. Square's not the right word, but it was just like. He was one of the Hollywood masters that Godard would cite that you'd ignore that he cited.
I remember seeing Stagecoach when I was younger. I watched The Searchers in high school. I remember my favorite when I was college age, was probably Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. But I never really dug deeper than, say, those 10. Excuse me, we've settled on 5 now. Those five films.
I yield the floor to your 10.
But you know what I mean. Just sort of, he has sort of these kind of
Hallmark kind of
exactly
legendary ones. Because I know, like I said, I was late to the game. I think Liberty Valance I saw in Austin at the Paramount.
Yeah,
I actually got to see in 35, and I remember when I saw Stagecoach, I think I was in my 20s, and that blew my mind.
Yeah.
But even then, I was just so late to all of these.
Well, I just figured this was the perfect time for me to do a deep dive into everything else.
So how many did you watch?
I don't have an official count. I watched maybe 45 feature films. Almost all, I would say every single sound film. Of course, he made hundreds of silent films. So I don't think there's anyone who's a John Ford completionist, but there could be, but it's pretty much impossible unless.
There's so many missing sound films. I was just reading that his Normandy Beach stuff has never seen the light of day. Have you seen any of his TV stuff?
I've seen a couple. There's that one with Spencer Tracy, who plays like a sports journalist. For he's following like a baseball. It's like a baseball
Really?
scandal. Yeah, it's about half an hour. It's actually great. It's fantastic. I'd recommend you find it.
I just he was such this model of I mean he was efficient filmmaker, but he was the model, the old model, big
Yeah,
budget filmmaking, just because he made things look bigger. For lack of a better term, he was always the more muscular shooter, the deep focus shooter.
right.
He was always the on location guy who would make his movies mostly on location, and so just him on TV, like especially right when he was starting in TV, like his return from TV from and return I mean he was gone for like what 6 months because that was a lot for John Ford
Yeah,
was The Searchers.
yeah.
It's like that's just to go back and forth between the two. I mean I know Hitchcock was going back and forth between the two while he was still making some of his biggest movies, but still.
You know what? It wasn't Spencer Tracy. It's John Wayne, I think. It's called Rookie of the Year, and he plays a journalist. Uh, and it's half an hour long, and it's basically a thematic precursor to The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance,
Okay.
where there's this incredible rookie baseball player who's seemingly come out of nowhere, and this journalist uh, gets a scoop that actually the kid is the son of a former baseball player who was part of the Chicago White Sox.
The Black Sox.
Excuse me, yeah, the Black Sox
Well, no, the
fixing
White Sox
scandal.
are the team, but the Black Sox
Yeah,
was the scandal.
right. That's part of the fixing scandal. And so the son is the father left baseball forever, changed his name, and so the son doesn't even know that he's the offspring of this great professional baseball player. And so the journalist has this scoop and is ready during the World Series to reveal it. And in just this short 30-minute episode comes to the conclusion that it's better to go with this sort of myth that the kid has come up out of nowhere rather than destroy his promising career by tying him to his father, who the kid's not
And that's
guilty
the
of
Liberty
doing.
Balance part.
Yeah, and so that's it's the same idea, and he hadn't even made Liberty Valance yet, but clearly that was sort of a subject that fascinated him.
How many John Ford movies a day were you watching?
It would probably spread out over the course of a month to I guess it would be 1.5 or 2 a day, but there would certainly be days. TCM would do them all on Friday, and so I'd watch pretty much everything that Friday, and then TCM, he made so many films that TCM can't even play them all. So I'd watch.
Yeah,
I'd watch.
I didn't realize they would play. They were even. I remember I was watching a few when they came on in July, but I
Yeah,
didn't know they had all of them up,
they
or as many as you saw.
they didn't. Well, I saw much more, so I supplemented what they did. They did maybe like
Oh,
6 films every Friday, and so I would watch those 6 on Friday, and then the week in between the next Friday, I'd probably watch 4 or 5 on my own that either I would rent or whatever. A lot of this early silent stuff is just on YouTube, and so it's easy to find that way.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and so I was using again like the Bordwell book on Hong Kong. I found another supplemental text, and this one was a book I already owned that a friend had recommended to me by Tag Gallagher about John Ford, and it's less. It has uh, biographical details about Ford, but it's less of a biography on him and more of just sort of a critical analysis of each film one by one. And so I'd watch a movie and then read the chapter on that film.
What kind of things was Tad Gallagher saying?
He would pick up on sort of a lot of the same thematic elements that would recur through all of Ford's work. The
Like the auteur theories in general.
yeah, I would say the main Tag Gallagher thesis is sort of this idea of pilgrimage in a lot of Ford's films. Basically, this journey from A to B, whether it's in Stagecoach, literally, or he even has a film called Pilgrimage in the 30s, which is kind of amazing, about this mother who is jealous of her son's coming marriage, doesn't want to let her son leave the house, leave her love basically, and without his knowledge enlists him in the war because she doesn't want him to leave and be with this woman. So the son goes off to World War One, and
I was about to ask which war.
yeah, World War One, and he's killed in action. And so the second half of the film is the mother living with this guilt of what she's done, basically killing her son out of jealousy. And it ends with her going to Paris with a sort of organized tour by the military, a sort of a promotional event to go visit the the graves of fallen soldiers with all the mothers. But of course, she feels like a fraud because she's the one who enlisted him without his knowledge, and so it's her making a pilgrimage to Paris to her son's grave, and kind of coming to terms with what she did. And that's an extremely powerful early.
When is this?
It's maybe 33, 34. It's early 30s.
My big viewing from the Ford movies in July on TCM, which I had never seen, was The Informer, which also blew my mind.
Yeah, that one's awesome.
We talked about this the other day about the Murnau influence, which like Ford really allowed himself to Murnau was brought over by Fox, and there's one movie Ford shot on some of Murnau's sets, but this one, the transitions, the dreamlike feeling of it, like it doesn't feel, you could, if you're aware of Sunrise or something like that, you'll look out for it, but this feels like a really poetic artist on his own doing his own stuff too.
Right. And I think clearly that story is important to him as well, and again, sort of just the guilt that the character is living with, which is similar to Pilgrimage. It's about these characters who are sort of harboring guilt and don't know how to properly release it into the world.
Well, let's go ahead and dive into the specific movie, your pick, which you want to go ahead and lay out the name and the synopsis?
Sure. It's The Long Gray Line, which is sort of this very ambitious film he made. It's the film he made right before The Searchers, about Marty Marr, sort of a custodian teacher type at West Point Academy. That's basically the film. It's sort of vignettes of this man's life.
Of his entire life.
Yeah.
So I hadn't seen it whenever you wanted to watch this. I mentioned on last week's episode I'd watched Last Hurrah last week, which is like 2 years after The Searchers, which I would argue is almost as good as Searchers in my mind. To be fair, I don't have as high opinion as Searcher as film historians. And you suggested this one. You suggested this. You were between this and Magamba, which is like a year before, I think.
Yeah.
You warned me about this movie, and the specific thing you said was it starts out like a Jerry Lewis movie.
Totally.
And the thing is, the movie has a very clear turning point. Like, it's weird how, like, this movie, in theory, kind of wants to, like, should go back and forth tonally, but, like, and I want to, like, is this John Ford doing South Korea cinema before South Korea? But then the movie has its turning point, and the way you phrased it was, like, it gets very moving. And the thing is, I want to say the turning point's not that far into the movie. It's like a half hour, 45 minutes. Yeah.
I'd personally say later. To me, the turning point is when
I have it as the child dying.
Yeah, that's when that's actually like an hour and 10 minutes into the movie.
Okay.
The whole first hour just is great, but it's like slapstick. It feels very frivolous. There's like 10 minutes of just the Army Notre Dame football game, and so it's kind of very silly and low stakes. But what I love is how the whole tone of the film almost follows the progression one would take through life. If you want to touch on that theme of pilgrimage,
you think being frivolous when you're young and being serious when you're old?
Yeah, well, I think there's, when you're young, certainly it's all kind of fun to you, and then through the course of the film, the character first realizes that he has responsibility to take on. So first it's him becoming a father. Then it's him wanting to leave West Point when everyone else is going off to World War One, but he realizes he has a duty to stay. And so basically kind of coming to recognizing life and starting to come to terms with responsibility and obligation and duty. And then basically watching kind of life pass by, like this parade at, on the campus grounds, just sort of seeing life parade by you. And, by the end, just a series of tragedies and reflections on that. So the tone of the movie really shifts.
Here's the thing. I think you're being very charitable about this first hour.
Yeah.
There's like...
Oh, I think it's way too. I think it's way too long.
Ford is good at comedy.
Yeah.
Ford has been good at comedy. He's done a lot in his career with that.
Yeah.
So I think the focal point for me was really Maureen O'Hara's first like 3 or 4 scenes. Like her performance in the first like 3 or 4 scenes is almost catatonic and bizarre, and it's not performance, it's direction of performance.
It's not even close to a realistic attempt at a realistic depiction. They don't.
Ford's probably just like say, hey, how wide can your eyes get?
Yeah.
Can you stare straight ahead and not blink?
They don't even talk until they decide to get married or whatever it is. So it's like,
and then she does the really like almost I don't know if this is fair, but I feel like there's like a high school community theater feeling of some of the 50s musicals that sometimes translates over to 50s dramas, and the way she puts her face into Tyrone Power's face to kiss him
when she wants to kiss him,
for a kiss,
yeah,
the theatricality of it and the oddness of it,
yeah,
it is.
Well, I'm not like a great thinker on film and art, but what a lot of people, and I think
I would disagree.
What I think a lot of people like Godard or previous academics would point out in Ford is sort of the Brechtian nature of his filmmaking, which is sort of theatrical and is not an attempt at realism so much as you're supposed to know you're watching a movie.
I guess, but that always goes into opposition with the backgrounds, because the backgrounds or something like we also are going to need to go down the line of discussing Grapes of Wrath and How Green Was My Valley at some point, but
sure,
like that one, there's a lot of subdued stuff in Grapes of Wrath.
Oh yeah, I think, yeah, definitely. I mean, he's just so great to me, but it is definitely a very odd first hour to the film, to The Long Gray Line, where it just feels kind of silly. Even the lighting is just like everything is, everything's lit. It's kind of front lit, and it later in the movie when the tone changes, suddenly there's a lot of great shadows and the images become very dark, especially inside the house. And it's almost like the cinematography evolves with the tone of the film. In the
I
look.
think what I gave it a lot of credit for is like The Quiet Man from a color standpoint is just you'd seen Ford kind of holding back because everyone knew him for composition, and then you see his use of color. Like I've never seen drums along the Mohawk but there's something like Quiet Man was obviously a big passion project for Ford, and the color in that is so astonishing that like I was still giving him credit of just like I want to see what Ford does with Technicolor, especially in Technicolor's heyday like this.
Yeah.
So I guess that first hour I gave a lot of credit where credit may have not been due.
It was also his first film in CinemaScope in widescreen, and I
noted that too.
I think he hated. From what I understand, he hated that format. But
like Kubrick hated that too.
Yeah, exactly. But the film still looks incredible, and I think as a result of him dealing with a new image size, his shots are a lot longer than they had been previously, and I think he is sort of discovering a new way of staging scenes as well.
There's a frustration. I tend to find, especially in some of the 50s stuff I've seen of Ford's, that when he gets into sets, like that's not where the meals I see from him eating go to. Like it's Searchers goes back to 185 and Last Hurrah's 185. I mean, he had probably dealt boxy with TV, but like I mean, also the movie he did after this was Mr. Roberts, which like do you know the full story on that? Because I vaguely know the whole him getting fired, but him not really getting fired.
Yeah,
Because, like,
I'm really not.
that,
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. I'm really not sure how much of Mr. Roberts he actually directed. I really don't know.
That's a Scope movie, though.
Yeah, I know he had a falling out with Henry Fonda on that film.
Because Henry Fonda, the story was Henry Fonda had played the part on stage, and I mean, how many movies had they done together by that point? 4,
Something
5?
like I don't know the exact number, but yeah, I mean they had done. I think it hadn't been. I'm trying to think when Henry Fonda had taken a break from film to only do theater, and
I've forgotten about all of this.
and I think it
Was it after World War II?
Well, I'm trying to remember if it was during World War II or if it was after World War II. After World War II, they did My Darling Clementine and Fort Apache.
My Darling Clementine's like 46, or I think.
Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the first movie he does, first narrative he does after the war?
I want to say They Were Expendable might have been it.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, They Were Expendable.
Is that right, or is that like because I still haven't seen that, but I know like he supposedly dislikes that movie, but a lot of vets like that movie.
I think it's pretty solid. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a solid movie that he's just hating on because the war was still too close to him.
Right. Yeah. I don't know, but so they do. Henry Fonda and Ford do My Darling Clementine and Fort Apache, and is there one other or not? I don't think so.
Well, it's Ford. The problem with following his filmography is there's 3 movies in between every nook and cranny that you've forgotten about. Like, oh yeah, the guy came out of silence, and I was trying to think of the modern antecedent to him right now, and the closest I got was Eastwood. I wish frequent co-host Ted Haycraft was on here right now to talk about it, since he's such a big Eastwood guy. But Eastwood's one of those guys that seems like they go so fast right now.
Yeah.
And
or someone like Soderbergh too.
Pre-production is not as big a deal to them, and they can launch these huge movies really quickly.
Right. The thing, I mean, one thing with Ford is that some years he's got like 2-3 movies coming out in the same year, which was obviously more common back then.
Long Gray Line came out the same year as Mr. Roberts, and Mr. Roberts is weird because like it got a bunch of awards, and he had to share the awards with whoever, I forget I have it written down somewhere.
I think it's Mervyn LeRoy, right?
Mervyn LeRoy.
Yeah, who I think is actually also a really interesting filmmaker, who doesn't quite get his due because he never quite tries to stand out, and he almost preferred being a producer. He was also a producer. And that Mr. Roberts is like a perfect example of the kind of filmmaker he was, where he took over for Ford, and his sole objective was to make the movie have stylistic continuity with the scenes Ford had already shot. And so he really was sort of like this chameleon craftsman who wasn't trying to draw attention to himself. But
was LeRoy a musical director?
He had done musicals, yeah. He did. He did Gypsy towards the end of his career, which is a great Natalie Wood performance. But he did. Didn't he do Gold Diggers of 1933? I believe.
I think that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. So he's done a whole bunch of. He did. What's the Edward G. Robinson gangster movie from the 30s?
I don't know.
That's a Mervyn LeRoy movie. There's another Edward G. Robinson LeRoy movie called 2 Seconds, where Robinson is on death row, and it's supposedly the 2 seconds of on the electric chair from when the lever is pulled to when you're dead.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and so
one of my favorite stories of all time, or issues of comics of all time, is From Hell, where it's the second to last chapter takes place in the second before Jack the Ripper dies.
Yeah. Well, so in this, basically the movie starts with him getting placed down in the electric chair, and the person in the prison pulls the lever, and then within those quote unquote 2 seconds, we get a flashback to his life and everything.
Framing device.
Yeah,
flashback.
Yeah, exactly. Everything that led him to this moment. Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot what is his masterpiece and the greatest of all his films, which is "I'm a Fugitive from a Chain Gang."
I have seen that. I have seen
That's
that.
that's like a stone cold masterpiece. I can't believe I didn't even think of that. So anyway, Leroy's an interesting director too, but it's harder to find good writing about him just because it seems like he gets dismissed a bit for just sort of a man for hire kind of thing.
Which, I mean, Ford is just too strong of a voice to be that, but with the frequency with which he worked, like, we would now look at him like that.
Right.
Especially, I mean, like, he shaped his I mean, what did the biography and books say about him? Because he worked with the same screenwriters very frequently.
Yeah. Well, he got. I mean, by the end of the 30s, by the late 30s, he is like one of the premier A-list filmmakers. Uh, he has 4 Oscars for Best Director. They're almost all before World War II. They're all from the 30s, I believe, with the lone exception of, I think, The Quiet Man.
Yeah, no, and I think I one of the things I've found going into this and going back into Last Hurrah is a willingness to admit that he still maintained his game into the 50s.
Oh yeah, he's the main films people talk about when it comes to Ford, whether it's The Searchers or even The Long Gray Line that we're talking about now, or Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. It's like the man is over 60 years old when he's making those films. He's not quote unquote in the prime of his life. He's already quite advanced in age, and sort of what people consider as his greatest films are much later than most filmmakers would be in their heyday.
Yeah, but one of the things when I find going back to him is that you find that he made equally as good films. He was just making them at such a increased frequency. Like the period between like Stagecoach, Young Mr. Lincoln, How Green Was My Valley, Grapes of Wrath. That period is pretty damn unparalleled.
Yeah, I mean I would say that is when he was considered, basically top of the industry, just in terms of, being a working director, and that's when the bulk of his Academy nominations came from. And I think after that, and then obviously the war came. After the war, I think he had a lot of flexibility just in terms of writing and shaping his own projects, and he formed his own production company, Argosy Pictures or Productions, whatever it is.
There was something where like he was it Selznick tried to give him a contract that he backed out of, or Fox tried to get him back, and he was just like he did a bunch of movies for Republic at that point.
Yeah, and he ends up
RKO.
So he ends up kind of going independent after the war, in a way that gave him a lot of flexibility, and that's how you end up with a movie like The Long Gray Line, which is sort of just this amorphous, ambitious story of a man's life.
Okay, let's skip back to Long Gray Line.
Sure.
So there's the first hour, which I know I have written in my notes at one point. Is this movie fucking with me? Like, I was like, John Ford is better than this. Like,
it's weird. It's a weird first hour.
It is. There's like the Notre Dame game, which you alluded to earlier, is the Newt Rockne first quarterback throwing game, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, it was that first out, and like Tyrone Power's performance. Like, I am wholly unfamiliar with him. I know like him and Ford did 2 movies together. He was originally supposed to be play in How Green Was My Valley at one point.
Is that true? I didn't know that.
Yeah. It was an adult character. I forget which character he's supposed to play in How Green Was My Valley, but what do you think of the performance?
I think he's great. I'm not well versed in his career either, but I've seen him in Henry King's version of this whole Jesse James story.
Okay.
I forget what year that's from. It's got to be late 30s, but it's Henry Ford and Tyrone Power, directed by Henry King, and that's great. But honestly, I have not seen a lot of other Tyrone Power films. I know he worked with Henry King a lot, But I think his performance is great in The Long Gray Line, and so is Maureen O'Hara's.
Well, I mean, a lot of Tyrone Power's performance is to like age convincingly.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, you don't even realize it, but the whole kind of second half of the movie, he's wearing aged makeup.
Or even like the framing device. Like I had to double check. Like, was that him in the framing device?
Yeah, when he's talking to Eisenhower.
So they had to in the very opening scene. The framing device. They have Eisenhower in there when Eisenhower's still towards the end of his first term, and I found it fascinating. One, they had to get Eisenhower to sign off to even be a character in the film. I have been trying to deal a lot lately, as much as I've been loving watching a lot of these Ford movies, Ford's politics. And I really don't want to look at it with a modern lensing, but it's fascinating that he has Eisenhower, the man who coined the phrase military-industrial complex. And it's in a movie about, I don't want to say glorifying West Point, because that's the whole thing with Ford. Ford's thing is always about celebration mixed with ambivalence and an awareness of the ramifications of that celebration. Like the man who came popularized the print the legend idea. Like this is something like I don't know if this is in the book, but like this is something that he had to deal with his entire life, and he was constantly dealing with.
Well, I think The Long Gray Line is actually very complicated in terms of his attitude towards the military.
Yes, very much. Very, very much.
It can certainly be read as sort of the celebration of military life. But at the same time, you go back to the beginning of the film when Marty Marr's first arriving, and, the whole ceremony around everything is ridiculous to him. And he calls West Point a prison. And he keeps...
I'd even point out that the whole movie is constantly saying, like, this is an institution where we send our best people, and then as soon as they leave away, they become a statistic, a dead statistic.
Totally, yeah. And he keeps trying to leave over the course of the whole film, and then...
including out of disgust for the deaths and the wars that West Point's pushing into.
Totally. And then it's out of various things beyond his control that sort of pull him back. And so, I don't know, I think it's a very complicated film, like probably most of his films. Where there's sort of a simple surface, but I think his politics in general are very complicated. I mean, he's the guy who made The Grapes of Wrath, which,
Yeah. There was a quote I came across recently from Peter Bogdanovich talking about John Wayne's politics, which are pretty obvious. And he was talking about Ford framing them, and he said something like, Ford talking about Wayne's like, I love that damn Republican. And it felt like one of those Bogdanovich ass coverings, or Bogdanovich kind of changing the score. But at the same time, like you said, Ford was so blatantly this humanistic, understanding, sensitive Irish artist. You know?
I think Ward Bond, who's also in the film and worked with Ford a whole bunch, I think gosh, I don't want to get anything wrong, but I think he was very far to the right politically, and I think Ford would actually have disagreements with him about a lot of things, based on different anecdotes I read. I don't want to slap labels on anyone falsely, but
yeah, and it's also tricky. Even like I've had this argument with friends lately, where if you call someone a Republican before 1960, it doesn't mean the same thing.
Oh yeah, everything is kind of fluid. So
yeah. So I really don't want to frame a modern lensing on all of this. It's just
totally.
Ford is the man who was a Klansman in Birth of a Nation, was, assistant director on for Griffith, and much like Griffith, like popularized the notion of the Indian savage, and then completely worked a long period of time to make an apology for that out of his filmography.
Yeah, and it ends kind of with Cheyenne Autumn, which is one of my favorite Ford films, where
see, I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's really fantastic. Carl Malden is great, losing his mind. It's a great performance from Carl Malden. Um, that's a wonderful film, and it's sort of taken a total uh, 180 from it. Really, Stagecoach, I think, is uh, where one could levy the most accusation of sort of of how one-sided his depiction is. But I think in general he's very nuanced about almost
You know,
everything.
you're putting your finger on one of the problems I've had with Stagecoach, because I've always seen Stagecoach spoken of in terms of the beginning of his apology, and to me, it's not enough. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's got terrible it's got like that pan uh to the Native Americans up on that cliff with sort of a what's supposed to be a scary kind of music cue at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's the film where, accusations of facelessness probably uh, are strongest. But in general, I mean, if you look
Well,
at all of his films in general, he's really someone who's preoccupied with uh, intolerance and sort of. He really is one of the great kind of humanist filmmakers. So it just feels
he
like a
really
very,
is. He
it
really
feels like
is.
a very kind of precursory or cursory reading of his films
Well, the
in
John
that
Wayne
way.
character in Searchers, there, like I think a lot of the textural readings comes on his feelings of ambivalence and switches in extreme feelings on things.
Yeah,
So, like him switching at the end of the movies always seemed as this turning point in understanding in America's cinema of simplistic stereotypes, you know? And that reading sometimes to me is just so giving to be
right.
charitable, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is not, I don't even think that's necessarily a fault against the film. It's more of a fault against the readings of the movie.
sure.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there's a great. I remember when one of Tarantino's first westerns came out. I guess when Django Unchained came out, maybe I don't know which one it was. He did an interview where he calls Ford a racist, and cites different reasons why he thinks that to be the case. And it was in Film Comment, the magazine that Kent Jones wrote, basically a rebuttal to that, mentioning how taking a day's pay as an extra to play a Klansman in Birth of a Nation is not you can't equate that with being a Klansman. That there's a there's a difference in those two things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it's this interesting article. I don't know if you've read it by Kent Jones. Basically,
I haven't. The argument seems convincing though.
yeah, basically just sort of uh, highlighting the humanism in Ford's films.
Well, it also like it's an issue I've been dealing with a lot lately. I keep going to history right now, reading history for escape from current times, and then like wanting to look at it with a modern lens, but also not contextualizing so much of what I'm looking at.
Uh huh.
Like, just it's the '50s. It's where mindsets were at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. What else do I got? Do you the Red Sun stuff? There's some really good stuff in regards to that. Where like the transition between him crying, like the 20-year cut there is like the Merry Christmas, Happy New Year cut in Citizen Kane.
Yeah. There's
That's
a
cool.
there's some really interesting time jumping that happens in the film. Just it's a lot like it's almost like a Ford's version of the life and death of Colonel Blimp.
That's a really good observation.
It's even got sort of the same framing device, and then it's the same wars, and the characters also are sort of recognizing the changing of times and how war becomes different. How basically the fun
Yeah.
in their earlier years is replaced by just the tragedy that one experiences over time.
It's
Uh,
got the same Technicolor splendor to it.
yeah, so I think there's a lot of parallels between those two films, and that's a film I really love too.
Yeah, that's like Scorsese's favorite Archer's movie. Yeah, these are the things where, like, if Ford only made a movie once every 2 years, these parallels would be a little more obvious, I think.
You saying you just think he over diluted himself?
I don't think it's a negative. I think because he produced at such a high level so consistently.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean,
it's literally just, or it's very much just how we look at his career. And I mean, like, he is the record holder for Best Director winner and for Oscars, which, you and I would probably be like, oh, Oscars being a barometer of quality, screw that. But, like, it actually plays out once you dive into the quality. Like, his level of sensitivity, like, I don't know, every time I go back to a Ford movie, I'm just blown away by it. Like, I was raving about this on last week's episode about Last Hurrah's ending, but what I found so fascinating is, like, the last 20 minutes of that is just an amazing. It should have been Spencer Tracy's last movie. It would have been a great last role. And then it builds up to this last line, which I really don't want to spoil, but at the same time, it's amazing. This last line is a giant audience laugh.
yeah.
And then it goes back to its mournful way of dealing with it. Like, I know I had this screening of My Darling Clementine, and I can't remember all of my logical followings on this, but I remember thinking this is the move. This has to be one of the most influential movies on Spielberg. This is like when we watch movies in a theater, Ford is the one playing on in a populist and sophisticated way on all of the things we like about movies.
Yeah.
Like big movies, big studio movies.
And there's certainly a Lincoln overlap as well. I think Lincoln is in like 8 different John Ford films. Ford was obsessed with him.
Wait, wait, what? Oh, he was in some of the silence. He was obviously in Young Mr. Lincoln.
Yeah, he makes his first appearance in The Iron Horse, which is a great silent film that Ford made. Then there's sort of tertiary storylines, like The Prisoner of Shark Island is about the doctor, what's his name, Dr. Mudd, yeah, who treated John Wilkes Booth on that night. There's it's got a great opening actually, where it shows the assassination at the theater, and it sort of freezes on this freeze frame of Lincoln still sitting in the chair. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, so there's that. Then obviously young Mr. Lincoln. He's just a portrait in Cheyenne Autumn that Edward G. Robinson is talking to, sort of asking for guidance. So Lincoln was obviously sort of a meaningful figure to Ford. Yeah, so I of course Spielberg tells that famous story of when he had a chance to meet Ford in his office, and Ford pointed to those paintings and said, what do you notice? And he was telling Spielberg to look where the horizon of each image was.
The 1/3 art rule, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right on the top or on the bottom.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Never put your horizon in the middle.
Yeah. So, I know Spielberg has just said about how, influential Ford was to him. So I'm sure smarter people than I could find endless parallels between them.
So winding down, do you want to talk a little bit about your movie and how much Ford might have been influential on that?
Sure. I was not thinking consciously of Ford at all making this film. I could
your compositions. There's some Ford in your compositions.
I could pull parallels out of my ass and lie to you, but if you want me to just kind of make stuff up, he's not someone I was actively thinking about when I made this film.
I think I was going for more foundationally.
Yeah, it's certainly, there's a lot that I respond to Ford thematically. Just his compositions and his staging, I really respond to. I think each time you watch one of his films, you learn more just about the construction of a film, how to put scenes together.
That's an interesting point because I know one of the things I wrote down, especially in the '50s Ford movies. You heard that Hawks' idea of how to make a good movie is to have a good beginning, a good end, and 3 good scenes in between.
I've never heard that, but it sounds like a good start.
It's a good opening 10 minutes, a good closing 10 minutes, and 3 scenes in between.
Yeah.
And Ford seems to be doing it just because there's structurally there's some really lackadaisical stuff or very episodic stuff, but then like he really seems to kick in the muscle into like the last half hour 40 minutes of each of these movies.
Yeah.
Searchers kind of for me follows that structure a little too.
He has this reputation of being a storyteller and quote unquote theatrical, but I think he's actually extremely experimental, just in a lot of his structure and a lot of his filmmaking.
I do want to go in this because our last phone call, you went and we were talking about Grapes of Wrath, and you were talking about the realism versus the you brought out the scene in one of my favorite scenes in Grapes of Wrath, the Greg Toland's like masterclass of lighting with a single candle and the expressionism in it, and that's when you and I would start raving about The Informer to you, but
Yeah.
you had an argument that there's more dreamlike stuff in Ford than is given credit for.
Well, I think a lot of it grows out of the Murnau influence from when he was at Fox. And Frank Borzage had the same thing. I guess, Murnau had been a success with Fox, and so I know they did a screening for their other filmmakers and almost made it sort of the studio look, what Murnau was doing.
Dreamlike German expressionism?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's how you get Borzage and Ford in the 30s doing very inspired work from Murnau. But Ford, it's interesting watching Ford through the 30s as he uses Murnau as a starting point and takes it into his own thing. And by the time you get to a movie like The Grapes of Wrath, it's interesting because everyone always talks about how, when they talk about The Grapes of Wrath, it's always words like gritty and just the realism of it. Kind of, you could feel how dirty it is and sort of exclamations like that. And if you watch the movie, it's really just one of his most abstract looking films. Especially that scene we talked about early on in the film with Henry Fonda and John Carradine, where they're in the empty house with the lone candle. And just spatially, you almost have no idea what you're looking at. It's just like faces and body parts illuminated in the darkness. It's like stylistically, that movie's very far out and not quite the gritty realism of the Great Depression that people talk about it as.
I guess when that scene stood out for me just because I always think when I watch that scene that scene is 37 years before Barry Lyndon,
Right?
And like
that's funny.
The balls of lighting a scene with a candle. Like every time I think technical details when I watch that scene, and I get what you're saying theatrically. It just seems like the grittiness is just. I don't know. I mean, it is clearly if you want to light a scene with one candle, you're definitely going for an expressionist point here.
Yeah. So definitely, just in general, he's a really kind of experimental filmmaker, and I think that
definitely capable of it too.
Yeah.
Even when he's at his most crowd pleasing instincts.
Totally. And then by the time you get to The Long Gray Line, it's just kind of structural. Really interesting structural thing where you've got the bookends like Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, of him at the White House talking with Eisenhower, but then you have basically just sort of episodic vignettes through a man's life, starting with silly slapstick and then moving through responsibility and tragedy. It's a really weird film, and the first time I ever watched it, I almost turned it off in that first hour just because I thought, okay, this is
that first half hour,
yeah,
first 45 minutes,
yeah. I just thought, okay, this is one of the silly ones. He must have, with The Searchers next, that's when he gets serious again. But I kept watching, and just suddenly the movie changes tone, and it becomes so moving. Just between the death of their child and then the deaths of basically his foster sons at West Point as they go off to war.
Ford died in was the mid-70s.
Around then, yeah. I don't know the year.
Me neither. He's got 20 years of life, yet the thing I find about the 50s movies is mortality. He's really already there.
Yeah. I mean,
Whether it's the end of his career or the end of his life.
same thing with a movie like She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, which is, John Wayne basically retiring from the cavalry and taking stock of his life. Or it was a couple movies after The Searchers, which is what the hell is it called? Wings of Eagles? Yeah.
That sounds right.
I kept wanting to call it.
Seen it.
I wanted to call it "Where Eagles Dare" or whatever, that Clint Eastwood movie. It's the Wings of Eagle. What is it?
You can look it up.
Can I look it up?
Hey, do a clap right now, and I can cut this out. Thank you.
The Wings of Eagles. That's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, Wings of Eagles. It's the one he made right after The Searchers, and that one's similar. It's about, I forget the guy's name, but that's another biographical war film, a lot like The Long Gray Line, where I think instead he's in the Air Force, and
Is this the one that where Ford he was basing this off a flyer he knew from World War II?
exactly, yeah, and he ends up becoming a writer in Hollywood, and Ward Bond plays essentially John Ford. He's playing a Hollywood filmmaker producer, but he's 100% cosplaying as John Ford as like an inside joke, even down to the hat and the pipe and the mannerisms, and so it's funny just from that perspective to see like basically a close friend, Ward Bond, who did like 20 movies with Ford, just doing an imitation of him essentially in front of the camera.
Just finally getting unleashed to do the interpretation. Did you want to talk anything about his World War II stuff? I don't think I've ever seen all of Battle of Midday.
Yeah, I mean, Battle of Midday's very moving. I don't know what I would have to say about it that smarter people than I have.
Most of my stuff from it was more thoroughly. All I've read from it is the Mark Harris book, Five Came Back, and they always talk about how the explosion started to get the film off of. Moved the film slightly, so it was the inspiration for war filmmaking from that point on. It almost like that film inadvertently made cinema verite in some way, or at least like here's how to do handheld camera to show chaos of action.
It certainly feels that way. And Wings of Eagles kind of has similar war stuff as well, where at one point it just cuts to black and you just get these rapid fire explosions of light in the darkness. Again, kind of very abstract. And Wings of Eagles ends with basically him being too not cut out for the war, and he gets transferred to a boat that's going back to the mainland. So to circle back to what you were talking about earlier, it's very much those films. He's really obsessed with sort of time and aging and people sort of trying to reconcile the things that happen to them in life that are beyond their control.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he was one of America's greatest cinematic storytellers for a good 30 years, or up there in the higher echelon. And as he got older, obviously, this is going to be his preoccupation. So
no, I think it's great that we got so many films from old man John Ford. Not just not just The Silence or through the 30s or the war films. It's just every decade is.
Well, the fascinating thing for me is, I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about whether it's a negative, but John Ford is one of those people. You're not going to, as you mentioned earlier, you're not going to get through his filmography. You can keep going back and finding something new from him.
Yeah, it's.
This is a guy that treated that threw off amazing feature films like they were short stories. He had to shit out 6 a year.
Totally. It's just an endless source, even down to Seven Women, his last narrative feature film. It was deeply moving to watch that because it feels like he's discovered again a new way of filmmaking. It's like his 200th feature film. He's like 70 years old, and you just think this guy could have kept doing it forever.
What in particular?
What in particular? It just, again, how sort of forward thinking it is in terms of his filmmaking, his cutting.
It's like when you look at Hitchcock's last movies, like you want to when you want to imagine that he would have adapted, family plot is still coming. So like it's not you're just really hoping the best for when you know the history.
Yeah.
But and to be fair, Ford, especially in the 50s, with all the scope and Technicolor being thrown at him, he still kept up with the times on it.
Yeah, I mean, even just the transition to sound, there are filmmakers who never figured that out. So the guy just kept evolving.
All from a guy that started out as it's funny when you look him up on my IMDb, there's still his acting credits are almost equally atop his directing credits because he was such an actor in the silence.
And he had just gone over. He had just gone over there because his brother was working in Hollywood.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for being on the podcast, Henry.
Yeah, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. It was fun.
This is awesome. You need to totally come back and pick some more movies to talk about.
Sure. We'll just do another John Ford movie.
Oh, Jesus.